What's up? How you doing? Here we are, beautiful night tonight. Have a glass of fresh water with a bit of ice in there because that's the only way to have water. Otherwise, what are you having really? Delicious. So I feel like I have an addiction. Not all the time, but when this substance is available. Pumpkin seeds. I never can seem to have enough. So if somebody brings me a big quality bag of pumpkin seeds, I can't stop until I finish it. Constantly, you know, and they have to have. I mean, I can get the clean ones, but I don't enjoy those. It has to be the combination of a little dash of salt and the whole motion of breaking the shell open and then getting one at a time. That whole process is very enjoyable, and of course the flavor. But it has to be of good quality. There's a lot of places they sell pumpkin seeds that they're just garbage. But I get some good ones. I get a good packet, about a kilo worth of pumpkin seeds. And like I said, I can't stop until I finish them. I had that same issue, and I still have that issue with pistachio nuts. A friend of mine, his mother, me and her went grocery shopping one time, and somehow my friend told her, I guess, that I like pistachios. So we were in this supermarket, very specialized supermarket, and she did her shopping, and I, you know, roamed around. I didn't really have anything to shop for. And then we put our stuff in the motor car, and we left. When we got to her house, she hands me a bag. She goes, "This is for you," and it's a big, heavy bag, 5-pounder of pistachio nuts. And I said, "Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate it." And I really did, because I'm a big fan of pistachios. So I went home that night, and while sitting in front of my computer, and this is the old days before the internet was developed, I think I was playing some, you know, basic game on there. I forget what it was, but, and I'm sitting there and I'm eating the pistachios, and I ate the whole bag that night. You imagine that? 5 pounds of pistachios in one night. And when I say one night, I probably started about 8. And by the time, I don't know, 1 o'clock rolled around, I had finished that entire bag. So when I say I'm a big fan, I'm a big fan. But pumpkin seeds, oh man, I just can't get enough. So, and now I have a fresh batch, and I've been eating them constantly for the last week. That's so good. So I was thinking today, you know, I'm a big fan of time travel movies. Time travel in general fascinates me. I always wanted to travel back to my parents' youth and somehow have not too big of a role. I don't want to change the outcome of anything, but, you know, just to be there and watch the outcomes, watch the stories that you know about develop. But also, you know, there's something about time travel that it can't exist for many reasons, but one, you know, that whole concept of you can't create new matter or destroy old matter, meaning it's always going to have something left over. And if you weigh everything, if you try and burn it, the smoke, the ash, all of that, it'll weigh just as much as that whatever thing you burned. You know, if you burned a tire, if you collect all the smoke, all the ash, all the stuff that's left over from the burning, it'll weigh as much as the tire itself did before you burned it, because you cannot create anything or destroy anything. So the problem with time travel is that you can, like, let's use the example, like the DeLorean as a time machine. Why, and especially after the Mr. Fusion thing came out, forget about the plutonium where they had to go and, you know, talk to terrorists to get that. But the fusion thing where it's, you know, energy from garbage. But what's to stop Doc Brown from having a time machine, like let's use 100 years into the future, goes 100 years into the future, it stays there, then another one comes right after that, maybe 110 years into the future, and then before you know it, you have the DeLorean every year, right? And then there's going to be a time when all of them merge and you have like 50 DeLoreans at one spot at one time, and that would be creating new matter out of nothing, right? So if he needed, like let's say my truck was a time machine. Well, I could have this truck that's next to me right now, time machine. I go into the year, next month, say, right? Then I take the same thing and I go, back to that spot again and again, and I keep repeating that. So I have multiple time machines coexisting at the same time, and that's the problem with the Terminator movies. So you sent the Terminator to 1984 to kill Connor, right? Well, okay, it fails. Why can't you keep redoing that and having multiple Terminators from slightly different times show up? Literally, you can go back 1,000 years and kill some relative of these people, so you don't have to go directly and kill Connor. You can go back 300 years to Ireland and kill a great-great-great-great-grandfather, and it would have the same effect, and it would be a lot easier because nobody would know. How would they know what time you picked to go back? But they went back to a time where the actual person that you want to kill exists, and so everybody, they sent the good Terminator at that time too. But what about if they sent the bad Terminator back to you hear that? Mama's boy, and they set off an alarm. But what about if you sent, it's starting to get on my nerves. What about if you sent a Terminator back 200 years and kills a relative from 200 years ago? Has the same exact effect. That's why that movie crumbles. Because if you have a time machine, you can go back in time anywhere. You can make multiples of yourself, just like Michael J. Fox when he went back to, not back, but when he went into the future and his older self was there. So that's two McFlys, right? Two Martin McFly, is that his name, Martin McFly? Marty? Two of them at the same time, coexisting. Now, if you do that 100,000 times, you'll have 100,000 of yourselves existing at the same time, right? And that is why it violates that law. Now maybe that law can be violated, but then where's the new matter come from? And that, don't even get me on matter. Where'd all this matter come from in the first place that we exist in? Nobody knows. Nobody. So, but I do enjoy time travel movies, time travel episodes like the Twilight Zone. There's an episode where a guy ends up back in the past and he runs into himself as a child, and he's trying to, I don't know if he's trying to warn himself about something or he's trying to just catch up with himself to talk to himself as a child. But as he's running, the kid falls, which is caused by himself again. He falls down, he injures his knee or his ankle, and then the kid gets up and runs with a limp, and then the guy, the older self that went back in time, now he has the limp, which he caused, which is kind of like a weird thing. But they have that. They have another one where it's like a military one. Some pilot goes back in time, and by doing that, he actually goes back in time, and then he has to go back to save a general or somebody high-ranking. But had he not done that, that general would have died in a fight, in some kind of dogfight. But it's fascinating. I think time travel forward is doable in theory. All you have to do is achieve 99% of the speed of light speed, and time dilation takes place. Time starts slowing down, and whatever appears to you to be, like a couple of months, everyone else that's not traveling at that speed would be like, hundreds and hundreds of years later. And if you're traveling at the speed of light, exactly at the speed of light, then time stops. There's no more passage of time. So if you're a photon with consciousness, and you, like say you were traveling millions of years from our point of view, from the photon's point of view, it would be instant. There wouldn't be any time dilation. I mean, it wouldn't be any time passage. So, very weird, and I don't know, Einstein's sitting back and thinking of this stuff, I mean, it's almost like somebody would have said to him, hey, that's, science fiction writing. Turns out it's the fact, it's truth. But I love these movies, especially the ones where, it was that Kevin Bacon was in one, and he had to go and impregnate himself or some weird thing like that to give himself birth, to give himself his own existence. Look, plastic. The other thing is on Back to the Future, that whole scene with Marvin Berry, Chuck Berry's cousin or something. I don't even know, is that a real person? Did that guy really exist? That Marvin says it's your cousin Marvin. Well, that song, Johnny Be Good, that's played in the movie, the only reason in the movie that Chuck Berry even knows about it is because Michael J. Fox's character, Marty McFly, is playing it. And so he hears it and then writes it, right? Which is kind of weird, because then it erases him from being the writer of that, and then he becomes kind of like the guy that stole that song because he heard it, over the phone. And, it's clever. It's clever. They basically make it look like Michael J. Fox's character uses a Chuck Berry song before Chuck Berry writes it, and then Chuck Berry hears it on the telephone, and then he writes it because he's stealing it off of the sound he heard from the telephone. So, and then when's the beginning, when's the end to the time travel thing? What was the original? It gets very confusing. And then, of course, you have all the paradoxes that take place. Like if you go back in time and you kill your grandfather, what happens to you? Because if you follow the timeline, you shouldn't exist, but yet you do exist. You were able to kill your grandfather. And then they explain that by saying that, well, what happens is you end up in an alternate universe. So you go into another universe, everything is the same except that which you altered, and the butterfly effect that affects everything beyond that. But if you're, that's the way they explain it, because they want to keep the whole thing alive, that time travel is possible, yet nobody's visited us. You would think that if time travel was an actual thing from the future to the past, that somebody would have come back. I know there's got to be the original time, right? So maybe we're on the original timeline right now. But if the universe is like a film that's been, pulled apart off the reel, and every frame is a time, then technically the universe exists all in one shot. The past, the present, the future, they're all there at the same time. You just have to jump from one to the other, which so far we have no idea how that happens. We do know about going into the future. That's just going quick, or being on a big planet. Big planets tend to go slower in time. So, time dilation. But, every time I think about that stuff, time travel and all that, it just boggles the mind. Our own existence boggles my mind. If you don't think about it, then it doesn't boggle anything. I don't even know what boggling is, but apparently it's something that makes you confused. The thing that gets me is the size of the universe. Even just the observable, right? Just the observable is huge. But I doubt, and this is all on faith, but I doubt that the universe is only as big as the observable. I doubt it. If you see fully developed galaxies on the edge of the, what we think would be the edge of the universe, or as far as we can see, and they're fully developed. That means that we're looking back in time billions of years, right? And so for those galaxies to be well formed, that means that the universe is much older, you know, because you can't look back billions of years and say the universe is only 13.8 billion years old, and then look at a galaxy that is there on the edge and think it was like instantly formed. You know, it takes time to get that spiral shape. You know, and I bet you if we were able to transport ourselves to the event horizon and look, we would see that much more universe looking out that way. So it wouldn't be like you're up against the wall, like I can't get out of here. But like I said, the more I think about it, even the older I get, the more it boggles the mind. And you know, there's no way around it. It's just a strange place we're in. Strange place. And why does reality have to look like that? Why does it have to be like this empty thing? Then you have these rocks that are planets. Then you have these sources of energy that are stars. I wonder if there's different kinds of realities, that the only way you would know about them is if you're born into them, or whichever way, or whatever system they use to make you exist consciously, or consciousness, for your consciousness to exist in a place like that's not of this world. You know, maybe there's an infinite amount of realities that have nothing to do with this kind of model, meaning a universe with empty space, rocks, you know, a sun source, or I mean an energy source in the middle, and you have these things that keep going around and around. Maybe it's something totally different than that. You know, maybe there is no space. Maybe it's just solid stuff. But you know, and I can understand why some people think this is a simulation, because it's so weird that the only way it could seem real is if it would be if somebody made it up, you know, if it's imaginary, because it's very weird. I mean, to me, the whole concept of what comes after the most furthest thing, and then what comes after that, and after that, and after that, and there can never be an end to the after thing, because no matter what you get to, even if it's a structure that you're inside of, so say there's just this big, you know, block, and the universe is inside. Okay, well, what's after that? And then what's after that? You can play that all day long. All day long. You'd be asking, what's after that? What's after that? What's after that? And it would never end. It would never end. That's why it seems weird that we even exist. Sometimes I think of my own existence and I go, it's weird that I'm here. You know, out of all the things, you know, that had to come together to make me come here. From the beginning of time on this planet, all the people, all the entities, everything that met and got together to create another human being would have to happen the exact way that they happened in order for me to be here. One person not being there at the moment they should have been would have thrown everything off and I wouldn't be here right now. But everything had to happen the exact way, which is very strange when you think about it. But it can only happen one way, right? Once it happens, that's the way, you know, that's the way the outcome was. You only think that way after the fact. You know, what about if my uncle was late one day when you know, he had a conjugal visit with my grandmother, you know, something like that. And you know, or let's say, you know, on the night you were conceived, your father, you know, he had to stop and get, you know, some groceries, and then he got a flat tire, and it took him another hour to get home, and then by that time he was too tired, he wasn't in the mood, so nothing happened. So any one of those scenarios would eliminate you. Or if your grandfather crossing the street back in the 1940s or something got hit by a trolley, there's so many things that could go wrong that would cancel your existence. And then so many things have to go wrong for you to be here. Maybe because certain things went wrong in the past, it created a different scenario that allowed you to exist. But, you know, it's just, I always think of the realities that I can't even think of, right? The ones that are out there, maybe, that are not universe-based, that are not empty space with, like I explained earlier, with planets floating around or dropping at a constant speed, going around a sun, the sun going around a galaxy. Maybe it's totally different, you know, but because our mind is occupied with daily things like, you know, getting up, making breakfast, you know, doing this, X, Y, Z, and it occupies our mind. We don't think about the weirdness of our existence, but you know, and we are the universe come to life. I know a lot of human beings, they want to think like we're something from the outside that, you know, got put here, and we have no connection to the universe as far as being part of it, other than the fact that we live here. But we're the universe come to life. We are a piece of the universe. We're made out of stars, the material that stars are made out of. We're made out of carbon. And you align the structure in a certain way, meaning the DNA, and you get this. I mean, there are better examples, but you get something similar. Like Ruth Buzzy. So I always think of that. I'm like, here I am. I'm on this planet. This planet exists in this universe. What is this place? You know, what is going on here? And here we are. We don't even know stuff about ourselves, or how our own body works. We have to discover these things. I mean, you think that the Neanderthals or the cavemen back then knew anything about the function of the lungs, or the liver, of the heart, or anything like that? They didn't look at it. They're like, what is going on in there? What's this mess? So it took research and thousands of years before we could start figuring things out. You know, before we just pop up here and we're like, what's going on here? We create meaning. We create, you know, stories about how everything came to be. In reality, we don't know anything. Even now, with all the scientific knowledge that's been gathered for the past 300 years, and mostly in the past 50, 60 years, we're very, you know, anemic on our knowledge. It's not, you know, that impressive what we know. What, like, in 1,000 years from now, we'll look back to what humanity knows now, and it'll look like the Dark Ages. Be like, yeah, they knew a little bit, but they didn't know that much. They were wrong on a lot of stuff, and I think we're gonna be wrong on the Big Bang. I don't find that to be credible. The more I see what they're finding now, and I mean, the Big Bang, it might have been something that happened in a certain part of the universe, but I don't think it's what brought the universe into existence. The universe may be eternal, may have always existed. I know it's a hard concept, but so is an infinity. You know, somebody says, oh, the universe is infinite. To me, if it had a beginning, infinite, that seems weird. So anyway, I'm gonna go in and grab a bite with some fresh water. I love cold water though. If I lived next to a glacier, that glacier would be gone by now. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.